Good afternoon and welcome to this flash update on the situation in Vietnam. This is Steve Burson dialing into you today from Singapore. So my name is Steve Burson, CEO of Reload Network Asia. Nice to be here today, and I'd like to welcome Donn in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. Welcome aboard.
Good to see you, Steve. My name's Garton. I'm the general manager of the Ho Chi Minh City office of Resident Vietnam. And good to be here today. Yeah, a lot going on.
Yes, and that's why we're here to hear about what's going on. It seems that things have, well, how have things been going since the borders have kind of reopened and things have started to flow again? After sort of, I guess COVID is still around, but
Yeah.
how are things now? And are there any restrictions left in Ho Chi Minh at this time?
No. So to enter Vietnam, no kind of COVID requirements or testing or really anything like that. On the ground here, things are very normal. They've just relaxed kind of the mask mandate here. So everyone still is mostly wearing masks, both indoors and outside, but it's not a requirement now. Schools have been back to normal for quite a while. Everything's open. We don't really have any challenges as far as ongoing COVID cases. The hospitals are pretty stabilized right now. I would say the only thing to maybe highlight would just be that if you're looking kind of for your booster shot, it's not easy to get here. So you might have to go to Singapore or Thailand, something like that. Mostly everyone here has 3 shots already, but the 4th shot, if you want to get a booster, those are not readily available yet.
Okay, that's good. Well, even here in Singapore, if you're not 50 years or over, you haven't been offering the 4th shot yet. So,
Okay, all right, great, got it. Okay.
All right. So how's the visa situation? I know that during COVID it was quite difficult to get into Vietnam, and there was several things that they were doing in addition to the regular visa and work permit procedure. How are things on that side of things now? Any blockages
So
or challenges?
yeah, on that, I would say on that side, a lot of things have kind of returned to kind of pre-pandemic normalcy. But on the visa and work permit side, those things have not. It's fairly easy to get what's called an e-visa, which is basically like an online application to come to Vietnam. Tourists will get that or whatever. But on the business side, there are significant challenges on that, both with visas and with work permits. So on the immigration side, business visas are a hassle to get now. We don't have visa on arrival anymore. It may come back, but that was a really easy option for most business travelers coming to Vietnam. Now they have to go pick up their visa at a Vietnam embassy overseas. So pretty inconvenient. Getting the paperwork to get that visa for a business traveler is also a challenge, especially for Ho Chi Minh City. The immigration offices are in a real kind of state of kind of chaos and change. So it can take up to a week, 2 weeks to kind of get through that process, where before it would only take about 3 to 5 days. We recommend people who are going to just come here for a business trip to basically just apply for the 30-day e-visa. It covers meetings. You can go to conferences or those kinds of things. If you're getting your work permit, ultimately that's not going to work. But if you're just coming on business, definitely the e-visa is the way to go. On the work permit side, again, not really going back to pre-pandemic. They've tightened up quite a lot, the requirements. The processing is quite a headache now. It's a real challenge in some various aspects to get the work permit now. That would be a whole separate kind of webinar to do that part. But definitely, if a company is going to assign someone to Vietnam, there really needs to be a good discussion at the beginning about timelines, about requirements, all of those things. Yeah, but we see it still a very high volume coming in. I would say in general, we're back to pre-pandemic volume. So there's quite a lot of activity, but it is challenging for work permits and immigration.
Okay, well, that's good to know, and I'm sure people can reach out to you, at Resident Vietnam
for sure, yeah,
further information if they require that. Yeah. Okay, sort of moving on more towards the sort of guts of what we wanted to discuss today, and with regards to the property market and things like that. So,
yeah,
as people have started to flow back, and as you are reaching these, back to pre-pandemic levels of volumes of people coming in, what are we seeing in the property market these days?
So the property market is quite hot. We don't have, Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi to kind of the same extent. These are not, as far as where expats live and work and go to school, these are not huge areas that expats can go to. So we have kind of very specific areas. It's just a few of them in both cities where expats will live. So those areas have kind of kept up the demand, even through COVID to some extent. We're seeing a lot of development in apartments. There's a lot of options on the apartment side, but again, you still have somewhat of a limited pool, and especially for the more preferred properties, everyone is just starting out with those. So for the most part, there's high demand right now. Most apartments are turning over fairly quickly. We're not really dealing with landlords who have been sitting on properties for a year or 2 years or something like that. The occupancy has stayed fairly high throughout the pandemic. We never really saw a huge drop in occupancy during the pandemic in the expat areas. For certain property types like service apartments, yes, but on the non-service side, we've seen demand keep steady pretty much through COVID, and now that things have reopened, demand is quite high. So there's lots of options. Yeah,
we perhaps break that down into sort of different segments. So if you're looking for a one or two, bedroom, size, 1 or 2 bedroom sized apartments, what's the availability like in that sort of area of things?
So 1, 2, and 3 room apartments, furnished, unfurnished, they're the most common property types that we'd be looking at. And there's a lot of supply in the market. Again, in certain buildings, it might be limited, but in general, there's quite a lot of options in the market, especially as there are newer international level apartment buildings coming online. So, we're talking, 1 bedroom, maybe 60 square meters, a 3 bedroom, maybe 120, 140 square meters, something like that. Okay. So for those, there's a lot in the market.
So those are apartments that you're speaking to right now. And what about, I'm not quite sure what the terminology you use in Ho Chi Minh might be. Is it villas or, standalone type properties? Are those?
So villas are one area or one property type that really have not developed over the years. If someone's coming here looking for a villa, they're probably looking at something that's 10 years old, maybe more. There's a lot of challenges with villas as far as, is it in a secure compound, which there are very few of in the city. no matter what your budget is on the villa side, that's a challenge because even if you have like a $6,000 budget, you're still looking at possibly not well maintained villas. There might be flooding in that area. So on that side, the options haven't necessarily increased as they have on the apartment side.
On the apartment side. Okay. Okay, and then so for larger apartments, for those that are looking for 4 bedrooms or maybe 5 bedrooms, either in apartments or well, let's go with apartments first.
Yeah.
How are things in that segment of the market right now?
So that's kind of where we find more of our challenges, I think, recently. So if families are coming here and they're a large enough size, they need more space than 120 or 140 square meters. A regular 4 bedroom apartment that might cost around 3,500, something like that, might be around 200 square meters, something
Okay.
like that. Those are very rare as a apartment type in the market. So all of the buildings, they don't build too many regular 4 bedroom apartments. They're here, but they're very hard to find and they're in very, very high demand. So what will typically happen is if you want a larger apartment, you have to go to a penthouse. And there you're looking at, 250, 300 square meters. You're looking at, you would need a budget around like 5,000, 5,500 for that. And again, you're still dealing with somewhat limited supply in the market. So there aren't a lot of penthouses, but if you're looking for a 4 bedroom at maybe like a 2,500 or $3,000 budget, that's going to be really tough. You might have to bump that up to 5,000 plus. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And so that's where some of the significant challenges are. It's sort of in that range between 3 and 4 bedrooms and between sort of what sort of $3,000 to 3,500 where you need, which is the absolute minimum you would need for something that's a 4 bedroom.
Definitely, and it's the highest demand, I would say, as far as property types, because again, it's a bit more limited, and we find a lot of people just don't. The only comparable size you can find is in a villa, and again, you've got a lot of challenges that come along with that villa that you're not going to have in an apartment block.
Yeah. And so a lot of these new properties that are coming onto the market, they're simply just not, they don't have the bigger units or the 4 bedroom units in them. They'll have a lot of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, but not of the 4 bedroom size. Okay.
Right, exactly.
I guess the way that people are working these days is also playing into this, need the extra bedroom for the office to be able to work from home and things like that. Does that play into things a little bit as well?
We hear that a lot. So, many times, even if it's just, let's say, a couple, they're still looking for a 3 bedroom because they need that extra room because they're going to be working at home 50% of the time or something like that. I would say for the most part, companies have brought people back to work here. They've been back to work in the office for a while. But even still, it's quite common on calls these days to say, I need this extra office room because I'll be working at home quite a bit.
Right. Okay. Okay. So would you sort of describe that 4 bedroom sort of zone being your biggest challenge right now in terms of what you're facing on day-to-day sort of basis in Ho Chi Minh City?
Yeah, I think as far as the property side of it goes, that's where we've run into the most challenges, where we've got, again, like a family of 4, something like that, 3 bedrooms too small, a villa's possibly too big.
Right.
So we're really kind of stuck with looking at a very limited pool of regular 4 bedroom apartments,
Right.
and then
And
we
then I
have
guess
to have the discussion.
and I guess the penthouses are quite often out of budget. Is that kind of the way that things go?
That's typical, yeah. So again, for a family of 4, maybe a common budget is going to be 3,500, even 4,000.
Right.
but when you're looking at penthouses, we're starting around 5,000. Yeah, for those.
Okay. Okay. So what would your, based on that, what would your sort of recommendation be to, to companies, to assignees that are coming into Ho Chi Minh? Is it best to, get in touch with you early and discuss, the options and the challenges and that sort of thing, and recommend getting a good sort of gauge of how things are going to work before sort of getting too far into the how would you suggest be the best way to move things forward?
Yeah, I think having kind of an honest discussion as early as possible about what's available in the market at a certain budget. Again, there may be larger three-bedroom apartments which might fit this kind of mid-range we're looking at. But certainly, to prepare the assignee that if you're looking for these larger property types, that may just not fit. And we're not going to be able to negotiate down 1,000 US or 1,005 or something to kind of match that. So we got to kind of start as soon as possible to kind of manage their expectations as far as what's going to be available for them at their budget. Yeah.
Sure. And that was going to be my next question, actually, negotiations and that sort of thing. I mean, there's this assumption that we see a lot in Asia. I'm sure Vietnam's the same, whereby, we've had 2 years of COVID, lots of people must have left,
Yeah.
property prices must have dropped. Surely we're going to be able to negotiate 20-30% on the rent.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, the reality is actually things have gone the other way. Is that true for
Right.
Ho Chi Minh City as well?
Yeah, very much so. You can quite easily see this as, sometimes our assignees will search online by themselves. They will find an apartment and say, well, hey, this is, $500 less than the one you're quoting us. And when we check at when that listing was done, that was about like 2 years ago.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's another discussion I'm sure we'll have about kind of online listings. But in any event, prices have not significantly increased because, again, there's more coming on the market all the time. But definitely, landlords are not desperate. So we're not going to be able to negotiate significantly on price. That's even not really typical in this market at any time. What we may be able to negotiate in is maybe the management fees or TV cable or something like that. But coming into the market expecting, a 25% reduction or 20% reduction, that's just not a common market practice here. And again, landlords are listing with multiple agents. If we're looking at a more popular apartment complex, if we're showing an assignee a three-bedroom apartment, it's possible like 3 other tenants have looked at that in the same day. So the landlord is not being pushed to negotiate down. Again, we're not looking at apartments that have been empty for 2 years or something like that. That just didn't happen in the market here.
Okay. So it sounds like the sort of the time that properties are on the market is shortening, would you say, in terms of availability and how long you've got before that property's taken by somebody else?
Certainly, yeah. So especially in these kind of like, again, maybe more popular apartment blocks or more rare 4 bedrooms or penthouses, those are turning over pretty quickly. You have to be kind of ready to move. So one thing we're always checking is the company signing the lease and making the payments, or is the individual? If the company's signing the lease and we've got to go through a vendor setup and it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get the payment, we may have to work with the agent to perhaps put a hold deposit down or something like that. So yeah, things are turning over pretty quickly.
What is the more typical way to be doing things in your market? Is it typical for people to be signing their own leases or typical for corporates to be signing?
I'd say it's 50-50 as far as our experience. And landlords typically are okay with either. if it's an individual signing and making the payments, you know, from them selecting it to them being able to move in, it might be 2 weeks if they want. So it's pretty quick. But you've got to get the security deposit down pretty quickly. Landlords won't hold on to apartments very long for anyone. So yeah.
Okay, so in terms of some timeframes and that sort of thing, I mean, how if you're coming to Vietnam next week to look at some properties, what's the kind of the maximum that you'll be able to, when you're thinking about the start of a lease, what is the maximum that an owner is going to wait for your lease start date?
The maximum is going to be 4 weeks. So if you identify a place, you know, you can move in 4 weeks later, maximum they'll start that lease. But again, you got to get the upfront payments pretty quickly.
Okay. That's good to know. Just getting down into some of the more sort of intricate parts of perhaps the rental process. In terms of sort of some hidden costs and that sort of thing, is there anything to be aware of in Vietnam or Ho Chi Minh that people should be aware of that maybe may not be displayed, for example, on websites and things like that, but is charged later on, and how do utility sort of charges look these days? I mean, and has there been any increase in those with recently?
Yeah, so I mean, just some general things. Number one, the tenant doesn't have to pay any agency fees or any kind of commission or anything like that. But the landlord will pay the agent the commission fee. Tenant who picks a place doesn't have to worry kind of about any of that. Registration or those other things, again, tenant doesn't have to worry too much about that. The things the tenant has to look out for, especially when you're looking at listings online, is to make sure things like the management fee is included or not included. If it's a corporate lease, there might be taxes on top of that. So if the company's paying. For utilities, the tenant will almost always pay the electric and water. We can sometimes negotiate into the price, again, TV cable or something like that. The tenant doesn't have to worry about setting up the utilities. The landlord will do that for them already. So they just have to pay at the end of every month. And then other fees just might be if they need a parking space, that might be extra. But otherwise, yeah, that's about it. They don't have to worry about too much extra. Yeah.
Okay. Any tips with regards to, and no country in the world has 100% accurate online listings. I think, Singapore, where I'm sitting right now, probably has, and the US probably has some of the most accurate. But even then, there's a lot of window shopping, window dressing, and things like that. I imagine that's a lot worse in Vietnam. Some advice for folks there?
So this is, I mean, when we talk about challenges kind of with incoming people, I would say this is kind of the second one, which is in the market here, landlords will list with any agent who approaches them. So there's no exclusivity in the market. So 9 out of 10 times when you see a listing online, it's either not available, it doesn't include all of the things in the price. It doesn't give you any sense of what the actual condition of the property is. So you have to be really, really suspect of any online listings. Again, most of them are old. We ask our assignees to send us any listings, and we can always check those with reliable agents. So until you're here on the ground, until we've scheduled a home search with you, it's really only at that point that we can get an accurate property list, things available, what the actual price is. Before that, if we're looking online, it's really just a reference. So again, we only work with preferred agents reliable agents. They
Right.
understand our clients. They understand the requirements of clients' companies and those kinds of things. So it's hard because I know assignees kind of want to check what's in the market and say, well, look, this is available or something like that. But 9 times out of 10, it's not. So you just have to be very cautious when you're looking online.
And I imagine there's lots of other sort of challenges as well. I mean, I'm not wrong. There's probably still a lot of development going along in, Ho Chi Minh, and I guess you have to be careful of noise coming from other construction sites and things like that. So one side of a tower might be, facing that noise, whereas another side of the tower might be looking at a river or things like that. So I guess those challenges exist too.
Yes, certainly. So it's really important when you're looking at differing prices, even within the same building, of what floor are they on? Do they face a giant construction site? Those kinds of things. So it's not enough to say, well, my colleague got this apartment for $1,300. Why are you saying this one is 1,700? It may be that that colleague's is on a very low floor and maybe faces the
Right.
wrong way or something like that. So it's we have to really look into these things to make sure that they're appropriate for our assignees, that we're not going to have any problems, or that a new construction site is going to go up right next door a month after they move in, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. How is things, just changing the subject a little bit, in terms of international schooling and that sort of thing? I imagine with an influx of people back into the market, and sort of rising sort of expat volumes and things like that, the schools are getting reasonably busy again too, or reasonably full. How are things on that side of things?
So far, I think to a lesser extent up in Hanoi, but so far in Ho Chi Minh City, we're still not dealing with difficult waiting lists or those kinds of things. There's enough seats. There's enough international schools in the market here, that seem to be able to absorb at least the current volume. We do suggest that parents, uh, kind of before they come, as soon as they know they're coming here, start that process, get in touch with the schools, find out what the availability is going to be with regard to their timeline and things like that. Because the longer you wait, certainly the more the classes fill up. So it's not common that we have someone come here and they can't find a seat for their child. But certainly the longer that you wait, your selection of school might shrink a little bit. So only international schools here are appropriate for foreigner kids. We don't have any local schools or anything like that that foreigners could go to. So you just focus on the international schools. And again, things seem to be pretty stable on that side.
Okay, good. Okay, so international schools don't seem to be such a big problem then. That's good to know.
Yeah, not a huge problem on that
Good,
side. Yeah.
good. Okay. Any other challenges that you'd like to speak about with regard to what you're working at on a daily basis with I guess a variety of different corporate clients with different budgets and different sort of packages and support for their assignees.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got, again, we're somewhat lucky in that we have a lot of options. However, if your expectations are quite high, and your budget may not fit those expectations here, um, really, we just want to try and educate our assignees and their companies as to what the realities are in the market
Right.
once you are on the ground. I would say, again, most of the other things, schooling, orientation, all of those things are definitely manageable. And for the most part, most of our home searches are quite manageable. But we have seen enough over these last couple of months that there are certain requests that don't really fit what's in the market. And we spend a lot of time, double checking, explaining, perhaps wasting time that we could be securing, the appropriate property. So that we're really trying to work on, and you guys have certainly helped us kind of work on communication and how we can kind of better set people up for success when they come here. So, but otherwise, things are quite good. We've been quite lucky here in Vietnam, despite some pretty harsh lockdowns. But otherwise, yeah, it's we're really looking forward to the rest of the year and definitely next year.
Okay, excellent. Well, I hope this, for everybody listening out there, I hope this will provide, a little bit of insight into some of the challenges, and in particular that I think, the takeaway I think is the sort of the difference between the 3 and the 4 bedroom, apartments, and the difficulty with management of, villas and things like that. And, just I think, we're doing this presentation today, or this mini webinar today, to try to communicate a little bit around some of those challenges. And I think that a lot of the time it is all about communication, and hopefully that people will be listening to you, and understanding that obviously resident Vietnam doesn't control the market in Vietnam, and that there are going to be some challenges in some particular areas. So thank you for bringing those things to the fore today. And I'm hoping that we can catch up again in a few months' time, and perhaps do an update of an update, and see how things are going. But thanks for making the time today. And please, if you have any final comments, please feel free.
No. This has been great. Again, thanks to Rela Network Asia and all your help as we kind of navigate, because we've been going through a lot of these things together. And I think we're in still that transitional period from COVID, and now things have opened up, and we're kind of still dealing with some COVID expectations and those kinds of things. So hopefully that'll kind of even out over the next couple of months, and we can have more efficient home searches and those kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for making the time today.
All right, Steve. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.